Hi everybody, thanks for watching. This is part 2 of the human resource frame, and in this video I want to give a specific example from some research that was collected over a period of a decade or so on what effective managers do when they're leading in the human resource frame. So let's quickly recap the story of the human resource frame. This is where the leader sees organizational life through the lens of a family. So it's like we're looking through some glasses, and what we see, we're making decisions and solving problems in everyday life, is we see the need for the family to be healthy. And to be healthy means that the needs of everyone involved on the team or in the organization are being met. And secondly, that there is this idea of reciprocity, where the organization provides its people with the things they need to do what they do best and to actually grow and improve. And as people's needs are met, they thrive. They grow, they develop, they transcend their own self-interest, and they stay. So players stay with the teams who consider their needs and meet them. And talented people stay as well, and they thrive. So you'll remember from last time, the first step in making sure that there's this alignment between the needs of the organization and people is to develop a compelling human resource strategy. This essentially is a mission statement and a set of core values that really motivates people to want to join your team. And if you've developed an effective strategy or mission statement, then the right people with the right talents and skills will come to you as you recruit them. The next steps in effective human resource leadership and management are to hire the right people and then to keep them by empowering them, investing in them, promoting diversity, and thereby motivating them to stay and to grow and to contribute to the organization and the accomplishment of its mission. So let's talk about getting the right people once you've developed a good strategy. When we think of hiring or recruiting people, each of us knows if we've managed or even been a part of a team and an organization for any amount of time that meeting each other's needs and having a good alignment or fit between people on a team is a lot easier and even more fun if you recruit people with the right skills and talents and maybe especially attitudes that complement the organization and the team as a whole. But we also know, for anyone who's hired or been a coach or assistant coach or seen people get hired in organizations, that recruiting the right people can be a little bit of a crystal ball or an unknown trial and error sort of thing. And that's not even to mention people who don't really have the ability to hire their own folks, right? Let's say assistant coaches working over a head coach who likes to control who they recruit and hire without seeking input. Or a teacher in a school district who serves as chair of a department who doesn't really have district approval on who gets hired and who doesn't. So obviously there are many strategies for hiring people in the research and in everyday organizational life. Here's one, though, that I just want to present for your consideration for your own professional development as employees. And here's why. The basic premise of this research done by the Gallup organization about 20 years ago is that people have unique, innate talents. And these talents are different than skills or attitudes that can be taught. So a talent is a unique, consistent pattern of behavior that emerges in the life of a person, almost regardless of training or even experience or socialization within an organization. These unique patterns that people have are natural ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And I'll show you at the end of this video a list of how these talents have been categorized into thinking, feeling, and behaving. But for now, I want to take a minute to give an example of one of these talents, a thinking talent, to show how these researchers viewed talents as different from skills and more like natural behaviors that people have that you can actually recruit for and hire in order to get the right people let's say, in the right seats on the bus of your team. So just for fun, let's give an example of a recognizing talent. The researchers would say some people just notice relevant information within a certain context where other information is provided, and they pull out meaningful information in unique ways that not everyone can see. So I'm going to flash something on the next slide, and you in your mind think about what you see and what it might mean. Here we go. What does it mean? The reason I only showed it to you quickly is because anybody with that particular recognizing talent would notice and draw out what they saw. So just to show you how this particular talent differs from a skill, let's say we're engaged in a training in order to try and produce a certain skill in this person if they don't have the talent. Okay, fine. Then here's your coaching session. Step number 1 is identify what seems out of place in the information that you've received. Step number 2 is to evaluate where that out of place information is in relation to the whole word, and the third step is to solve it by combining steps 1 and 2. Again, figure out what's out of place with the information, evaluate where it is in the context of the larger word, and then combine the 2 steps to provide something that's meaningful. Fine, so now that you've been trained to think in this way and your skill is being developed, what do you see? Fine, if you're playing along, you say, step 1, what's out of place? The letter A. How's it out of place? Step 2 is in context of the larger word. The A is raised, right? In the larger context of the word pay. Put it together to draw out meaningful information from this word, and you say, a raise in pay. And who doesn't want that? And that's cool, and that makes everybody happy, right? What's the point? People with this particular talent wouldn't need you to explain the steps that they need to take in order to understand. All right, then, let's see if you can do it on your own. You should know it by now. What is it? Yep, a drop in temperature. Never happens in Riverside. It's going to be like 100 degrees forever, right? But people with the recognizing talent of thinking would capture this immediately. And now, just to bore you a little bit, this might be one of the more difficult ones, but again, if you have this recognizing thinking talent, you will notice that this is the common phrase, but on second thought. But on top of the second thought, that's out of place. See, I can explain it and you can learn the skill, but I don't have to explain it to people who naturally have this talent. So that's just one talent in the thinking category. This Gallup research organization would say there are at least 15 thinking talents that we can identify. We can decide if our organization or team needs that talent, and then we can recruit for it. So hopefully I piqued your curiosity. We can continue the conversation for those who might be interested, but for now, that was one thinking skill. There are also relating and striving skills. A quick example of a relating skill, that just means how do we interact with others? What are our social talents like? An example of a relating talent would be someone who likes to win others over. They walk into a room, they build relationships very quickly, they connect with people almost immediately, and they build trust that they're interacting with connects with them. And better yet, wants to stay in relationship with them. These researchers call that talent a woo talent, win others over, W-O-O. And as you've listened, most of you say, yep, I know somebody like that. I know people who can connect immediately, who can almost draw people from across the room to want to interact and engage with them, and who want to be in relationship with those people. Usually we call these types of people charismatic, but not everybody with this relating talent would necessarily be thought of as charismatic. And it probably goes without saying that if I'm a hiring manager, there are certain positions where we just need someone with this sort of ability to relate well to others and to engage in relationship building and to exert influence towards some organizational goal, whether that's recruiting athletes for your team or fundraising for your athletics department. This relating skill would often be something that we want to recruit for. So then the question becomes, if I know I need it and I want this in an employee, how do I recruit for it? And we're not going to spend a bunch of time in this class on hiring strategies, but for now, I would say the researchers would say it depends on what the talent is. If it's a thinking talent like recognition that we just went through 5 slides on, you identify what type of thinking skill you want them to have, and then you put them through examples to see if it's a natural talent rather than a skill that could be trained. So the idea would be, it's not enough when you're hiring to look at someone's academic transcript and say, you got a 3.9 in an elite school, therefore you're intelligent. Now, these are specific talents within the broader realm of intelligence. So we have to have simulations or some form of cases or hypotheticals that draws out whatever thinking skill that you hope the candidate has, in addition to just being able to pass tests and get good grades. And the relating talent I mentioned of the winning others over, hopefully you see that's fairly easy. That's why you have a couple of days of longer interviews just to observe how they interact with people. And anybody with strong relating talents will demonstrate those pretty quickly through campus visits, let's say if you're a student athlete recruit, or through interview itineraries if you're in a larger organization. Quick, but hopefully some of you found that interesting, and for those of you who actually get to be a part of the hiring process of management and leadership soon, hopefully you file that away and process a little bit of that idea of talent. So let's say then that we hired well, we got the right people in the right seats on the bus who exhibit the right talents, and you bring them on and they join the team. How do you as the manager keep them? What steps do you take in the human resource frame to actually meet their needs so that they stay for the long term? Go through a strategy for keeping employees that your book lays out before getting into another specific example from the research. So the book addresses the issue of pay and says, look, pay should reflect value added. If the human resource leader wants to empower people by meeting their needs, then we first need to understand that money and financial compensation is a real need of people. So there's a great quote from Daniel Pink, who was one of the researchers that we mentioned in the last video, that comes from the psychological research on what motivates people. And he has this line where he says, basically, when considering how much to pay people, the point is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. The idea here for managers who are in charge of determining salary, first, that people don't work only for money, but secondly, that if they're not paid enough, especially for talented workers who could go elsewhere, then they're thinking too much about money rather than the work and what they can contribute to the team, and they are very likely to get distracted and demotivated and even to leave. So this quote here you see is true of California Baptist University, and even they offer some examples in your book, Costco versus Walmart. The idea that we should seek whenever possible to pay employees more and charge customers less. And while that sounds sometimes counterintuitive to our bottom line approach that we often see in organizations, for companies like Costco or for universities like CBU, this system of valuing employees and customers, as well as the larger organization, equally in our decision making, can really lead to sustained growth for your team and organization. Pay people enough to get their minds off what they're making in the first place, and then make sure they know that if they meet expectations, there's some merit attached on the other end where they can advance and get raises and progress as employees. And then also know that if they continue to meet expectations, the jobs will be protected. This would be the opposite of, remember, a Theory X approach to leadership where the employee is constantly wondering how they're doing in the mind of the employer, where that lack of clarity is actually by design on the part of the employer because of how they view the employee. remember, the paycheck is the motivator, and as Theory X would say, if you remove the incentive or paycheck, then people become lazy and disinterested and will even check out and not come to work anymore. So there are a couple other steps for keeping the good, talented employees that you hire that Chapter 7 lays out. So make sure to read about those. But for now, I want to introduce another specific model from the research, again, that provides an example of what effective human resource leaders do. And this is actually a pretty cool study because it comes from an ongoing set of data that was collected from a large number of organizations from employees and managers, where these employees essentially described what effective and ineffective managers did to create environments that motivated them. And this data was collected through descriptive ongoing surveys, but then the researchers would also follow up and interview groups of people and individuals to go deeper into discussing what about these particular behaviors or characteristics by the managers facilitated them being motivated and empowered. So you see from the slide that what was started in 1999 has continued even into the 2010s and after 2006 to include millions of interviews in almost more than half of the countries of the world and in multiple languages. I mention that just to show you that these findings come from a large body of data rather than, let's say, a bestseller book from some leadership guru who wants to get you to buy, a ticket to his next seminar. All right, quickly, this is what you need to know. Out of all this data, once it was processed, the conclusion essentially was that employees who felt empowered and worked at productive companies were able to answer 12 questions with consistently high and positive responses. And I'll show you the 12 questions in a second, but for now, these questions build on each other, kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs pyramid. The questions build on each other, and all employees start by answering the first couple of questions before they can move on to answering the next set of questions in a positive way. So here are the 12 questions that engaged and empowered and productive employees answer positively on a consistent basis. And now we'll go through those questions in more detail. But remember, this is sort of a journey by the employee within the organization that starts here and is viewed by the researchers as sort of a climbing of the organizational mountain, where the employee is hired and starts at the base camp, and then as they answer the first couple of questions positively, they move into Camp 1, and then the next couple of questions lead to Camp 2, and so on until they're at the summit or Camp 3. And they are basically focused on 3 driving questions at these different levels. And the first basic question or focus starts day 1 when they're hired. And the focus is, what do I get by being a part of this organization? The idea is this: people will begin to feel empowered and they will move on into the next level, which is Camp 1, if they know what's expected of them at work and if they have the materials they need in order to do what's expected. Obviously, that's not highly theoretical. It's not rocket science. None of you are shocked by this. But here's the point. If there's any confusion in employees related to answering these questions, they don't move on. They never get past this. So for question 1, and related to this confusion, remember the structural frame. If you, as the leader, aren't an effective architect, and if your structural design doesn't actually lead toward efficiency, in other words, if the rules and roles and procedures aren't clearly defined, then your employees might be at risk of not knowing what's expected of them at work, either because there are too many people doing the same thing and there's not enough work to go around, or there's not enough people, let's say, so that things fall through the cracks and people feel like they're wearing too many hats and too much is expected of them at work. So even the structural frame bleeds into the human resource frame here, and a poorly designed structure may cause them to not know what's expected of them at work. But now question number 2 asks, does the leader actually get us the materials that we need in order to do what's expected of us? And are they even aware of what the materials are? Are they engaged on a regular basis with communicating with us about what our needs are? So you'll see in the human resource frame, this implies ongoing check-ins where we're communicating, and there's that reciprocal relationship between people and the organization or the leader where these discussions are being had. And if you've communicated well, and if you've designed the structure well, and people can answer those 2 questions positively, they move on, they become more empowered, they become more willing to commit in a longer term to your team. So you'll notice at Camp 1, the next level, these questions become more about people's individual growth. So they've answered the question of, do I have what I need and do I know what I'm supposed to do? And now it becomes more self-focused, where the employee asks, if I do what I do, will other people notice and care, and can I contribute? So this is essentially, I want to be a part of the team. Can I be an effective part of the team, and will other people see me as that? So I won't read every question to you, but you should pause this and just take a look at the questions so that you see how relational they are and how focused they are on meeting the needs of the employee and recognizing when they meet the needs of the organization. So that alignment idea of the human resource frame is pretty strong here. So once the employee feels like they can be themselves and that them being themselves brings value to the organization and that people notice, then they make a longer term commitment, or at least they start to consider a longer term commitment to the organization. So the focus here is, can I make a long-term commitment? And do I want to stay? Do I see myself here for the foreseeable future? So notice the questions here relate more to meaning and personal development, or what Maslow and other psychologists might call self-actualization. So not only if I'm me and bringing my talents here, can I contribute? But now it becomes, can I actually get better and become a better version of myself here, and will others support that? So here we have more of a theory Y approach to management that views empowering people toward personal growth as an assumption about why people work. This view says that people don't just come to work for the paycheck, but they actually come to work for meaning and purpose and personal growth. So the last stage, once they answer the questions positively about personal growth and whether people encourage them to grow as a person, the final stage for an employee who is in a productive organization where their needs are being met is Camp 3. It's the most advanced stage of the climb, where people are growing, people are receiving meaning from their work, they are empowered, and so they thrive. And they actually transcend, sometimes even their own boundaries, and they become innovative, and they become more willing to take risks and embrace the position and grow alongside their colleagues and really see how far they can go as part of the team. So this is where they have a clear focus and a recurring sense of achievement. This is where we want to be ourselves as leaders and managers, and it's where we want our employees to be. So the research, and remember, it's a lot of research collected in an ongoing way from over 140 countries in 40 different languages from millions of people, says that people really want to respond positively to those 12 ideas in the workplace if they're going to stay long term. So I want to end by connecting some concepts here and saying the final thoughts from this research are that managers should really spend considerable time on getting employees to positively relate to the first 6 ideas or questions. First 2 questions: do I know what's expected, and do I have the resources I need to do those things? The quickest way for the manager to make sure that employees can answer those questions is to first hire the right person, know who you want, know how to select the person with the right talents so that they can thrive just by being themselves. So for questions 2 and 3, do I have the resources? And then question 3, do I have the opportunities to do what's expected? This is where goal setting comes in. And this is where relating to people well by understanding their needs as well as the organization's needs leads us toward setting accurate performance expectations, or setting SMART goals, or the right outcomes. And I want you to connect the 1-minute manager concepts here of setting 1-minute goals with your employees in an ongoing way, because those are the sorts of things that help your employees respond positively to questions 2 and 3. Questions 4, 5, and 6 require a relational approach by you as the leader with each employee so that employees hear prompt and ongoing positive feedback when they do what's expected, and you as the leader and manager and other co-workers show that they care when people are doing good work, when they're about the goals of the organization. And in order to do this well, it requires face time, requires us, the phrase is managers who manage by walking around, but the idea is that we actually spend time empowering people by serving and acting as the catalyst, connecting the needs of people with the ongoing goals of the organization through meetings and through FaceTime and just through leading by example and taking time to be with people that you work with. So I would say there are no shortcuts to empowering people. Yeah, it's not enough for those of us who consider ourselves as people, or we seem to be aware of the needs of other people. That's a start for effectiveness in the human resource frame, but it's only a start. This model and this research would say that great managers who produce productive and happy and satisfied employees know how to set up each person for success by motivating and developing those people, by first taking them seriously and taking their needs seriously, and then spending quality time in developing these people. So it's not enough to hire the right people with the right talents. Then the real work of motivating and developing can begin and can be effective when leaders learn how to see reality and solve problems in the human resource frame. So that's all for this video, and now you are prepared for the online discussion in Blackboard. Enjoy that, and I will talk to you soon.